We went down to Brisbane to look at sports and recreation and how it is accompanied and compared to New York as a world-class city. For our formal interview, we sat down with Justin, a senior representative for the Commonwealth Games. We also had a talk with Ellen, who was the Chief of Staff. She gave us many facts and figures on our topic, sports and recreation.
Right, so how do you think the Commonwealth Games rank towards different sporting events around the world?
Okay, well look, my understanding is that the Commonwealth Games is the third largest sporting event in the world. So you've got the Olympics, obviously, huge event, the World Cup soccer, and then it's the Commonwealth Games. So it's a major event for Queensland, it's a major opportunity. It's a huge event. We should be really happy that we've got it.
What's going to be the difference between the games occurring in Australia this year and the other Commonwealth Games in different countries?
Yeah, I think the Gold Coast will be the difference. So you've seen the view out here. Imagine that same view, but with the Commonwealth Games in the background. It will look amazing on the coast. We've got the facilities, we've got the climate, we've got the people, and we've just got the Gold Coast. So I think that'll be. I think that the destination is the big difference, and I think that Australians do major events well. So I think that we'll be well organised. It'll look beautiful, and it'll entice a lot of people to come to Australia and to the Gold Coast.
Cool.
Yeah. What would you say is the most watched sport, and why would that be?
Well, the most watched sport by Australians?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I reckon it's probably the sports we do well in. Swimming, obviously, is very popular and will be, the tickets have gone for that, I understand, very early, so swimming is one. I think, though, that there's going to be some interesting kind of new events that people are going to engage with. So the downhill, I call it downhill BMX, the downhill mountain bike riding, I reckon will be an amazing event to see. But also some of the para events. So the para marathon where Kurt Fernley is competing, I think will be a really exciting event for people. There'll be a lot of people watching that.
Yeah.
What impact do you think the athletes have on the younger people and aspiring athletes in the world as role models? Do you think it's a positive or a negative?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both, depending on the elite athlete we're talking about. So if I'm thinking about soccer, which I know a little bit about, Suarez probably isn't the best role model out there, given that he bites people. But others are. So I think I think that there are positives and negatives. I think, though, that having a major event like the Commonwealth Games in a state will inspire people like yourselves who are interested in sport. They will be able to see that if they pursue it, if they train hard, that there is the opportunity to compete at an international level. And I think that that's where a major event like Commonwealth Games or the Olympics can transform people from recreational sport to professional sport, and inspire people to really see that they can be part of a major event. So look, the athletes are inspiring, but the event itself is also inspiring, and the opportunity to compete internationally in your own backyard has to be inspiring for the athletes.
Yeah. How do you think these Commonwealth Games will rank to other past games in the countries in popularity-wise?
I don't know, it's really difficult for me to say. I haven't, this will be my first Commonwealth Games, or second. I guess I was alive for Brisbane's Commonwealth Games back in, when was it? Was it 88? I'm not sure. Anyway, I was alive, but only just for the first one in Brisbane. Look, I think this will be a great Commonwealth Games. I think that this will show that the event is alive and well, that it can bring tremendous benefits to the host city and to the host state. I think this event will prove that there is a long future for the Commonwealth Games. So I think it'll probably be the best, but we won't know until the closing ceremony, where very important people will tell us whether it's the best ever or not.
Yeah.
What would you say has been your favourite facility?
Okay. Look, I think I've got two favourite facilities. On the Gold Coast, I do love the Aquatic Centre. I love it for a couple of reasons. It's beautiful to look at, but also it will provide a long-term legacy for the Gold Coast. So as a community facility post the Games, it's a tremendous facility. And it's been built in such a way that it will operate just as well as a community facility as a sporting venue. But for sheer beauty, I think the velodrome at Chandler is my favourite venue. So if you have a chance to see that, you really must. It's an absolutely beautiful building, beautiful timber throughout it, and it will look spectacular when the athletes are cruising around it at 60 kilometres an hour.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
How do you think sport in Brisbane compares to sport in cities like New York?
Wow. Well, I think that I've only been to New York a couple of times, but the thing that struck me about New York was that sport is played 24 hours. So I arrived in New York at 11 o'clock at night, and there were people playing basketball, just off the main drag. So it's a 24-hour city. The thing about sport in Brisbane is, it's mid-August, it's 30 degrees outside. Our winter's really only a couple of months long, and there's no excuse not to get out and play some sport, go to South Bank. Our city is all about the outside and taking advantage of our lifestyle and our climate. So I think that from that perspective, New York is really hot in summer, it's really cold in winter. We're pretty accessible in terms of sport year-round, so I'll put Brisbane ahead of New York.
Yeah.
Still, I like going to New York.
Yeah. How would you say the popularity of sport and recreation compares Brisbane to New York?
Popularity? Oh, look, I'm not sure, to be honest. I imagine they have quite different recreational and sporting pursuits in New York. I mean, as I say, ours are outdoor sports. Ours are cycling, South Bank, walking, running, soccer, cricket, you name it, those outdoor sports. New York, they've got a lot of indoor clubs, so there are people going to play a lot of racquetball and squash, indoor sports, just because of the climate. So, look, I think that there are differences, and the climate is probably the key driver of that. The other thing that's a driver is that we have open space and fields. So, we have got the recreational facilities that in a city like New York, with the population it has, it simply can't afford to provide. It's got some parks, but you can't just walk down the street and find a cricket oval or a soccer field.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think sport is portrayed to the world today? Is it good or bad?
I think that the major events like the Commonwealth Games provide an opportunity to bring out the best attributes of sport. Part of that is ensuring that it's an even playing field for all, but also gender equity in sport is particularly important, and this is the first Commonwealth Games to have the same number of gold medals for men and women. The other thing that I particularly like about the Comm Games is that as opposed to the Olympics, you've got able-bodied athletes and para-athletes competing on the same day at the same time. It's not a separate event for the para games. So you will go to swimming, you will see able-bodied athletes swim, and then you'll see para-athletes swim. So in terms of inclusion, accessibility, and equity, I think that's really very important. Sorry, what was your question again?
So, if it's sport portrayed in the world,
how does it portray sport? Yeah, look, I think that the Commonwealth Games portray sport particularly well for those reasons, particularly around equity and accessibility. But I think that just the view of the Comm Games on the Gold Coast, with our beaches and with the facilities we now have, I think will show to the world just what opportunities there are in sport. That being outside, being in our environment and competing at an elite level is a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
Do you think the facilities in Brisbane are adequate for sport?
All sport, yes. Well, yeah, obviously,
Yeah.
I'll answer yes to that. So we've got very good elite facilities at this stage, from our Com Games back in the 80s, the venues that we've upgraded and built, so the Velodrome at Chandler and the Belmont Shooting. Those two events are being held in Brisbane. But as we discussed before, just generally, our outdoor recreation facilities are tremendous. We've got recreation across the river at South Bank, but we have fields for cricket and soccer and a whole range of activities wherever you look. Increasingly, Brisbane is using the river, so you've got the river sports down here, so there's canoeing up and down the river. You've got climbing on the Kangaroo Point cliffs. Increasingly, I think people are looking for opportunities to get outside, and we have the facilities to meet that demand.
Yeah. The Sports and Recreation Ministry, if the Sport and Recreation Ministry had more money, which venues would be most suited for a renovation?
Yeah. Interesting question, and probably not one that I can answer for you. Every department of government wants more money, and every department of government has good arguments for getting more money. The difficult thing about government is that you have a finite amount and you have to make decisions about where it goes. So I'm sure that there are tremendous opportunities to invest in sport and recreation, but I'm going to leave that to the Minister for Sport to work out.
And our final question, do you think sport in Brisbane will be more popular than New York in the future?
I don't know. I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer. Sport in America generally is terribly popular. Sport in New York, I'm sure, the same. I'm not so much worried about New York as Brisbane, and I can see that there's a growing awareness, particularly from people your age, about the importance of sport to lifestyle and to health. Governments have invested over many years now to reduce smoking, to increase participation in sport. I think that Australia is uniquely suited to outdoor recreation and sport. So, in my view, there's no reason why we couldn't be a sporting capital. In fact, I think we probably are already a sporting capital in Brisbane and in Queensland.
So just one more question. What makes Brisbane a world city?
World city. Oh, look, that's really hard to define. I know in the early days when governments were looking to increase the profile of a city, we were doing things like trying to get Brisbane's weather on the CNN run sheet down the bottom of the news. There's all sorts of ways you can try to create a world city. I think that a world city is created by its people rather than a single thing. You know, I don't think a single building or a single piece of infrastructure creates a world city. I think it's about the contribution that people from that city make to the world. Yes, I think the Commonwealth Games is another opportunity for Brisbane and South East Queensland and the Gold Coast to highlight the fact that we are a major contributing region of the world, but I think we've all got differing definitions of what a world city is. I think we already are a world city. I look out the window here and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. So yeah, I'd say we're a world city now.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
No probs.
Really nice
Thanks,
meeting you.
guys.
Yeah, it's been great.
No.